love our Lake Michigan beaches and sands. I love the texture of bark. I love textures. I've realized it in looking around my house that I'm into tactile things. And so I'm trying to reflect that now in my body of work. I also bounce back and forth between things that you can use in your kitchen, your living room, your home versus what can hang on your wall, what can be outside as a sculpture. And I think I will always bounce back and forth between the two because, like I said before, I do get bored and I need to go in a different direction. I begin making my pots by typically combining two kinds of clay, usually 2/3 porcelain with 1/3 of stoneware. And what that means is that I have to wedge the two clay bodies together. I wedge it 100 kneads. It's like wedging or kneading bread, same kind of concept, and you're basically doing that so that the two different clay bodies become one. And it takes all the air out of it, and it's ready to throw. Then you take it over to your potter's wheel and you slam it down on the wheel head and you center it. Centering can take you one time to learn. It can take you 5 years to learn. It took me about 4. I just could not get it, but once you get it, it's like riding a bicycle and you will always have it. From there, you center it, make it a cone, bring it back down again, and then open it up. Put my thumbs down through the center and then put some more water into it and then take my 2 other fingers and start pulling it out towards me so that I widen that hole. And at the same time, you're always compressing the clay so that it doesn't get away from you, so that you have a very strong form. You compress the lip and you compress the bottom, otherwise you're going to have cracks. Then what you do is take your one hand and it's on the inside of your form and the other one on the outside, and you are literally just pushing your 2 hands together, and it causes the clay to rise. And you have to do it steadily. You can never do any jerking motions, and you slowly move your hands up the clay, and as your hands go up, the clay also is being compressed and goes up and causes a taller form. Then you use a rib that will help you, one, take water out of the clay surface, helps compress the clay, and also helps you shape the piece. The piece I'm throwing here actually doesn't have a bottom, so I didn't have to worry about whether I compressed the clay at the bottom. Let it sit up just a little bit, and then I will take a wire that looks like the inside from a ballpoint pen, stretch out that wire, and I'll use that wire to make the wavy lines like the beach sand along the bottom third of the pot. What we're going to do is cut it at the bottom, and then we will push the piece together so that it's an oval now instead of a round. Then the top third of the pot, I'm going to push it together, and I'm actually going to, at the very top third, I'm going to cut a round circle out of it so that you'll have kind of like an eye to look through the piece. Clay is tactile. You can mess with it, and if you don't like it, you squish it and you start over again. Also, I get bored very easily, and there's always something new you can learn with clay. After it sets up further, I will take it off the bat and I will place it on a slab that I've already prepared. I usually texturize the bottom. We'll cut it to fit. We'll attach it with slip. And then I will continue with using other stamps to finish the sides and bottom. To make handles, I will first make a cylinder, and then I'll cut them to be about, say 12 inches long. And I'll take my bucket of water and I will dip it in, make sure my hands are wet, and I'll start pulling on it and trying to shape it so that it's an oval, elongated piece of clay that's smooth, uniform. It's kind of like milking a cow. You do this again and again and again. It always makes kids laugh. And you then cut it to the same size, and you'll have one for each side of the face. Then what I do is I clean up the top of the handle, and I will apply some slip to it, and we'll make scratch marks in the vase, and we will attach it. And then you basically you take your time, and you use your thumb to push the handle into the body of the vase And once it's cleaned up, then you actually pull out the handle once again, just like you were before when it was over the bucket. And the goal is to get it moving into the shape that you want it to be, whether you want it to be like a letter D, whether you want it to be, I have a larger loop at the top and more angular at the bottom. This is when you're actually thinking about what is the shape of your handle going to be. Then I attach the bottom, and I take a paintbrush and I apply what we call magic water. It just helps prevent the handles from separating away from the body of the piece. And we then cover it with plastic and let it very slowly dry. It might take 3 to 5 days for it to dry this way, but by doing that, it makes sure that my handles stay on. It makes sure that this hole that we made stays together and doesn't crack, and then it'll be ready to go in the bisque kiln. Okay, my pot has been bisqued. It gets fired to about approximately 1800 degrees, and we wait for it to cool down again, and I will put wax on the bottom of this pot so that glaze does not stick to the bottom. I have a bucket of glaze already prepared. I'm going to dip the bottom where you see the wavy lines up to that point where it ends, and now I'm going to wait for that glaze to dry so I can handle it. It just takes a couple minutes. You'll see that the upper 2/3 of this vase has a green colored slip on it. On this we're going to put what we call reticulation glaze. Reticulation glaze is a chemical reaction that when it's fired, the glaze actually breaks apart, and you'll have bubbles and crevices, and it makes a very interesting texture. So the top 2/3 of this vase is going to be reticulation glaze. And you'll see I'm going to paint this on where the other glaze I dipped. Alright, so now we're going to load my gas kiln. My gas kiln is fairly large. I can actually put 2 of me inside of it. We have kiln shelves that each weigh between 8 and 20 pounds, depending on which one I'm using. And it's like figuring out a jigsaw puzzle. The goal is to get as many of your pots as you can in the kiln, but you're always thinking about how is the airflow in the kiln going to be. There's 2 live flames that move through the kiln when I'm firing it, and how your pots turn out will depend on how much air you've allowed to move around your pots. So I'm putting this vase in, and we're going to close up the kiln, and tonight I will light the kiln pilots. When I wake up in the morning about 6 a.m., it will be at approximately 900 degrees, and then within a half hour it's going to be at 1200 degrees, and from there it will work its way up over the next 9 hours to 2300 degrees Fahrenheit. After 2 days, I'm going to open the kiln. We've peeked in the spy holes a few times just to see if glazes run onto shelves or if things look pretty much okay. And here's the finished piece.